Welcome back, YouTube. Welcome back, book reviews. Welcome back, IWC. It's me. It's me. It's the GOC for another episodic YouTube adventure for story time here on Guardian of Chaos, the YouTube channel for Chaos Corner. I can't thank you fans enough for being here. This is going to be an unbelievable story time. Go back and check out the opening monologue into part one. We're doing this in a series of episodes, part 1, 2, 3, 4, so on and so forth. A little bit off the beaten path for this channel, but you know my background. Go to the top of the page, see what I did for a career, what I did for a living, all the different hats that I wore, and all the different entertainment aspects of life. Here today, and over the next several days, leading into Christmas. Merry Christmas to everyone. We're less than a week away. Stay safe, stay mentally, emotionally, physically, and spiritually fit, as I always say. If he's for us, no one else can be against us. And this was a big part of my life, especially in the 80s into the 90s. And this is what we're reviewing here today on Storytime, aka Book Review. The legendary Toad's Place. We're in the time machine, going all the way back to 1975. If you saw the first two episodes here, I'll give you a big background of my connection to Toads, what Toads was really all about, and all the testimonials. You'll find it fascinating. Again, off the beaten path here, because I usually cover pro wrestling or sports entertainment or UFC, some sort of sports in general. This is what this station is all about. But we're going into the music industry. And if you know, you know. Written by owner Brian Phelps and local columnist Randall Beach. Stories from New Haven's famed music venue. Chapter 1. The Toad is Born. Now, I don't know how long we're going to go, what I'm going to say, how I'm going to introduce this, produce this, edit it, whatever it is you're going to do. You know we're one man, unique, unedited, unscripted, raw dog for you, the fans. So go with it. Grab a snack, grab something to eat, grab a beverage. Let's kick back and relax. Here is a temporary distraction, a stress reliever, and hopefully I can provide that for you because I know it works for me. I get chills and goosebumps as I just purchased this book to be able to read. And it was a big part of my life, especially through the 80s into the 90s. And the people and connections. So I want you to be a part of it, and that's why I decided to step away from the usual here on the channel and go into something a little different as we go into the holidays and then into the new year of 2025. So again, much love and respect. Thank you to my mods, the OTS Tribal Queen and Austin Nance, for holding it down, keeping it real, and maintaining it. In January, again, remember this, as I stumble, fumble, rumble, bumble, I know I'm a pretty good public speaker, and I'll pat myself on the back for my linguistic skills, but I'm reading this for the very first time, along with you. In January of 1975, 3 young friends in New Haven, Connecticut, pooled their meager resources to open a French restaurant they called Toad's Place. I'll give you a sense of what those times were like politically and socially. America was in post-Watergate stupor. 5 months earlier, Richard Nixon had resigned in disgrace because of that scandal and was replaced by Gerald Ford, a calm caretaker. The Vietnam War, which had polarized the generations and killed more than 58,000 U.S. soldiers, was finally winding down. 4 months after Toad's opened its doors, U.S. involvement in Vietnam would end with the fall of Saigon. On television, we would watch the frantic helicopter evacuation of the few Americans still there as the South Vietnamese government surrendered to North Vietnamese troops. I turned 21 in the spring of 1975. Now, in the spring of 75, I think I'm 13 years old myself. But Nixon had abolished the draft 2 years earlier. Like millions of other young American men, I had caught a lucky break, as did I if I was born a few years earlier. Just to give you the time frame here, I want you guys to sit back and remember where we are here in 1975. Watergate, Vietnam, the whole 9 yards. For those of you that are too young to know, and those of you that are my age. In early 1975, on the grounds of Yale University, which surrounded the new restaurant and soon-to-be music club.
Motion detected at front camera.
There's always somebody watching, right? That's why you have to be prepared. I say it all the time. You guys see it during the live shows here. Nothing gets by this place, the Ponderosa. You better be the same way at your place. Just simple. Be aware. It's not being paranoid. It's called being prepared, being aware. Situational awareness, keeping your head on a swivel, especially in this day and age, because something's coming. Something's happening that none of us are prepared for. So stay in faith. Stay mindful. Live in reality. Go about and live your life, but keep it right here. You guys know what the fuck I'm talking about. I know that you do if you're paying attention. Don't be distracted by all the stuff that's going around. Use your own discernment. Again, early 75 on the grounds of Yale University, which was surrounded the soon-to-be music club. As I said earlier, everything from the brewery to Broadway to Cutler's Record Rack to the New Haven Green. That's where you were, in the heart of the Elm City. I forgot about the veal cordon bleu. Students were no longer protesting the war en masse as they had in the late 60s and early 70s. Like me, they didn't have to worry about being drafted and being sent overseas to fight and perhaps die in an unpopular war. They were ready to party. Yale had gone co-ed. Wow. In September 1969, but Yale men still needed an off-campus site where they could hang out, drink, listen to music, and pick up women. And the women were up for some action too. Don't be fooled. Now, right there on York Street, next to Maury's, the storied but stuffy and staid dining club for old Yale chums, the young Yaleys would have their own place. And I'm not talking Skull and Bones. I'm talking Toads. Do your research as you hear the messages coming from here. We don't want any copyrights, man. YouTube's had their foot on my throat for 6 months. Like to go out to Simi Valley, wherever you are, and kick somebody's ass. There were thousands of other college students in New Haven area looking for a social outlook, thanks to nearby campuses of then Southern Connecticut State College, which became Southern Connecticut State University.
Motion detected at front camera.
There's a lot of activity going on around here today, right? Oh, don't worry. Come here. I'm prepared. I am the guardian of chaos, and I do tell it like it is. And I'll say that to say this. Let's continue with the legendary Toad's Place. Also, the University of New Haven and Quinnipiac College, all in one area. Southern and Quinnipiac have since become universities. I'm even a step ahead of Brian Phillips and Randall Beach. They provided a great marketable melting pot. Oh, and as I said in the last episode here for Toads, the drinking age was 18. Keep that in mind. The intimate, cozy atmosphere of Toads, at the time you could squeeze in only about 400 people, offered an alternative to the large concert venue a few blocks away. The legendary New Haven Coliseum, aka the New Haven Arena, which had a seating capacity of about 11,000 people. The Coliseum was an ugly concrete structure that had opened in 1972. I hope your notebooks are out. That's why I present this. So you're better off when you walk out of here than when you walked in, so you actually fucking learn something. But no offense, man. What I say, lighten up. The Coliseum was an ugly concrete structure that opened in 72 with a performance by the Beach Boys It had replaced the rundown New Haven arena at which, in December 1967, Jim Morrison, the charismatic lead singer of The Doors, got busted by the New Haven police. Think of the history here in this area. Not only the New Haven Coliseum, the New Haven Arena, the legendary Jim Morrison incident, being arrested in New Haven. Elvis Presley was here on that stage at one of his last concerts. The Beach Boys. And you're going to learn about the history from U2 to the Rolling Stones to Springsteen to Dylan, who just showed up and played at Toads. I'm getting ahead of myself here. Come on, baby, light my fire. Try to set the night on fire. They told me you would be untrue. They said that you would be a liar. If I could say to you, girl, we couldn't get much higher. Come on, baby, light my fire. No? Too early? Too much? Too late? I like to throw my skills out there, if that's what you call them. That's why you're here. This is an extravaganza, a bonanza. This is entertainment, along with the truth. Morrison was pepper sprayed by a cop backstage and then proceeded to blast the pigs at the start of the show, no offense, and got hauled off to the police lockup for performing an indecent and immoral exhibition. He later got revenge by writing and recording Peace Frog, as we talk about the legendary Toad's Place and the frog. Morrison went on to write Peace Frog, which described blood in the streets in the town of New Haven. That was right here, guys, in this area. The greater New England tri-state northeast area in the shadows of Titan Towers. Very historical. I've already gone through some of the historical places in the previous episodes. That's why these episodes and what I'm doing here is a little alternative and break away from the industry that we love and the business of the IWC. This is going to be an excellent distraction, and I hope you guys really enjoy what I'm presenting. Again, we're going to do this in multiple parts. So keep up on us. Go in chronological order. Follow along. Like America itself, rock music in January 1975 was kind of a malaise. The word Jimmy Carter would one day use to depict our mindset after he was elected president in 1976. Malaise. Bruce Springsteen would not explode onto the scene until August of 1975, with the release of his breakthrough album, Born to Run. The punk era bringing the rise, not CM Punk, hold on, not for my IWC fans out there, not CM Punk. The punk era bringing the rise of seminal bands such as the Ramones and the Clash was yet to bust out. Disco music still filled the airwaves. I gotta be honest. I worked at Daniel's Discotheque, Montego Bay, all the clubs up and down the East Coast. I was a disco duck, to be honest with you. I'm just telling you, I enjoyed the rhythm, the movement. I was big on dancing, working in the clubs. It really was something, disco. Say what you want. I enjoy all types, from classical to rhythm and blues to country to classic rock, southern rock, disco. I enjoyed all music genres. I really did. And still do to this day. The big hits on the charts at the outset of 1975, remember, I'm 12, 13 years old. I already had rhythm at that point, man. You either have it or you don't. Included these awful earworms. Some of them I didn't like either, that's for damn sure. I didn't like all of it. Mandy by Barry Manilow. A remake of Please Mr. Postman by the Carpenters, who Karen Carpenter, obviously the Carpenters, were born in New Haven. Realize the history in this area. It's unbelievable. Laughter in the Rain by Neil Sedaka. Get Dancin' by Part 1 by Discotheques and the Sexolettes of the Mountain. Morning Side of the Mountain by Donnie and Marie Osmond. Angie Baby by Helen Reddy. Rock and Roll, I Gave You the Best Years of My Life by Mac Davis. Kung Fu Fighting by Carl Douglas. Everybody was kung fu fighting. Ha! Those kids were fast as lightning. Huh. Now it was a little bit frightening. Do, 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 do. No? Again? Too much? Leave a comment in the chat, man. Let me know what you think of my vocal skills, baby. Where were we? Kung Fu Fighting. One Man, One Woman, Man by Paul Anka and Odia Coates. You remember that, don't you? And Sweet Surrender by John Denver. Again, I didn't like all of it. You guys know that. But those are the 1975 playset there for certain genres. You get the picture. We were primed for better music, something challenging and inspiring. And I agree with that. Enter Mike Spernoodle and his two buddies, Mike Corpus and Chuck Metzger, all out of Ohio. Spernoodle and Metzger had come to New Haven to enroll in the prestigious Culinary Institute of America. Corpus had a background in the bar business. Spernoodle, who was called Big Mike, was a burly, outgoing guy who loved to schmooze and party. The perfect personality for a restaurant or nightclub owner. We would become great friends, housemates, and business partners. The promoter, Jimmy Koplick, who with his business partner, Shelley Finkel, Koplick and Finkel, very famous around this area, all over the world, brought many of the country's biggest rock acts to Connecticut in the early 70s and beyond. He recalled meeting Big Mike in 1977 when the Young Toads co-owner needed help getting national bands. My first impression was, this guy's crazy, said Koplick. He was larger than life, big, loud, a heavy drinker, a heavy drug taker. Everything about him was excessive. Everything. Remember, this was the 70s. I'm not making any excuses. He was always a great friend, Koplick added. His heart was as big as his body, but he never took care of himself. He just couldn't stop doing the drugs. Very unfortunate. It goes on in today's day and age. Some things never change. Mike was the idea man, and his, as Koplick noted, would become the soul of Toads. But his over-the-top lifestyle and addictive nature would also lead to him having to leave Toads after a 20-year run of glory days and glory nights. And it would claim his life at the early age of 59. Rest in peace, Big Mike. Long before the drugs took over, Mike was an ambitious young chef studying for a career in the restaurant business. After Mike and Metzger graduated from the Culinary Institute, culinary, whatever, they hatched the plan of opening a restaurant with Corpus, but they didn't have much money. Mike had to borrow 11 grand from his mother to launch the venture. He was only 23 years old. The three old pals focused on a vacant property at 300 York Street. Go duck, duck, go it. The former site of a laid-back eatery called Hungry Charlie's. It was a sandwiches and burgers joint with a pinball machine in the corner. Oh yeah, I remember Hungry Charlie's. That was where I had my first beer. It was 1973 while I was still a student at the University of New Haven. My buddy Lou Buccino and I went over to Charlie's to get burgers. This was the first time I set foot in a space that would totally change my life. Stand by, fans. Don't go anywhere. This is story time. And a great story at that I have a personal connection to. So this means a lot to me, and I hope it becomes relatable as you go through the many series and episodes and parts of this book. I ordered a beer to go with the burger. I didn't like the taste of that beer at all, but there was something happening to take my mind off my beer. Charlie sometimes had live music, and that night they had an act called Room Full of Blues, another famous band that I had a chance to see about a dozen times. Room Full of Blues. Excellent. I had never heard of them, but those guys who came out of Providence, Rhode Island, had already been performing since the late 60s and would keep on trucking with different musicians for more than 50 years. The waitress came over and told us, okay, you guys have to pay 50 cents each to stay for the show. Put that in your pipe and smoke it. Let that marinate. Think about that. 50 cents. Not the rapper, the singer. No. Whatever the fuck he is. She said, okay. And we paid a quarter each to stay and hear a room full of blues. They were set up on a kind of makeshift stage with only a couple of speakers. I didn't know how much music then. I didn't know much about music then. So the whole experience was totally new to me, but I kind of liked it even though I knew zilch about the blues. When I was a kid growing up in New Haven and going to Catholic schools, all I listened to was whatever they put on AM radio. A friend of mine had a transistor radio, and we tuned into the local stations to hear Elvis Presley and then the Beatles. I didn't go to many concerts either. My cousin took me to see the Temptations and then the Byrds, and those were the only shows I saw. My mother made me take guitar lessons when I was in the 8th grade. I hated it. My fingers were always sore from the strings. After about 6 months, my guitar teacher said, you don't really want to do this, do you? And that was the end, and it just wasn't for me. New Haven in the early 70s had a lively folk scene going on, and its center was the Exit Coffee House near the New Haven Green. One of the musicians in that mix was Peter Menta, who played in the Blake Street Gut Band. Say that 3 times fast. Menta had a knack for using his connections to book other bands, and so he started doing that for Hungry Charlie's. He lured Room Full of Blues there, was plus plenty of local bands. When Mike Spernoodle and his 2 new business partners were getting ready to open their doors, they had to come up with a name for their restaurant. Mike told me they were sitting around one day, and one of them noted that back in Ohio, people are couch potatoes, that our couch potatoes are called toads. If you're a couch potato, you're a toad. If you were staying home, you would say, I'm being a toad tonight. Mike said, I like that. And here we go. Let's call it Toad's Place. I hope your notebooks are still out. All of a sudden, they had a distinctive name. People would remember it. But the 3 partners didn't think that much about it. They didn't know that Toads was going to be there for 45 or 50 years. They thought it would be this thing they would have for 5 years, and then they would be on their way to something else. After Hungry Charlie's closed because of lagging business and Mike's crew moved in there, Mike realized he needed live music to survive. Menta knew the music business. Mike and his partners didn't. So Menta stuck around for a couple of years as the Toad's Place talent scout and booking agent. This was before Mike got Coppola to help them out, obviously. Menta, who as late as 2020, was still playing with Washboard Slim and the Blue Lights. Remember, for Mike and his partners at the start, it was all about the food. Music was an afterthought, but their restaurant with its shrimp baskets and chicken baskets and clam baskets and buckets of steamers wasn't doing much business. Creditors were circling in, demanding their money. United Illuminating briefly shut off the electricity, those sons of bitches. Pat Healy, the first bartender at Toad's, who would become a longtime mainstay and one of Mike's best friends, remembers the days of 1975 when Mike realized that he needed a big change and to make that change, and then hit on how he could do it. There's a lot that goes into it. Mike was standing out front on the sidewalk one day looking around. Watching all those college kids walking by, Healy recalled, remember, the drinking age then was only 18. And Mike comes in and says, I got this figured out. What do college boys like? Hello, McFly. Of course, I told Mike, college girls. Mike says, what do college boys, girls like to do? Naturally, I told Mike, drink beer. Mike asked, what else do they like? music and dancing. Ding, 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 ding. Healy remembers Mike unleashing that big smile of his, the welcoming and mischievous smile that everybody loved. And he just said, yep. Mike knew he needed to reconfigure and enlarge the space, making it more suitable for bands. A thrown-together crew, including a teenager named Dave Plaskin and local musician David Bobo Lavorgna, whom Mike knew. They brought in planks from bowling alley to help build the bar and a bigger stage. Michael also got hold of a basketball court at a high school in Massachusetts and turned it into the dance floor. That's right, the dance floor at Toad's was a hardwood floor. It doesn't get much better than this, fans. But the lights that hung over the stage were still old coffee cans. These guys were making up as they went along. And that's usually how things become successful. They knew people would want pinball machines and a popcorn machine, so those were installed too. According to Lavorgna, who seems to remember the mid-1970s better than the rest of us, the first live band to play at Toad's was a pickup band that included Bobo on bass guitar and Menta on harp. Record keeping was sloppy, as is this show sometimes, in those days, so it's impossible to verify his story, but he said this happened in the summer of 1975, which I believe somewhere around there or not much later was the Son of Sam in New York. Am I right if I know my memory? Was it like 77, the power outage and all that? Am I a couple years off? I think I am. I love history because it's facts and it tells the truth. He recalls they played on the original small stage. Oh, wait, hold on. Let me not slip by this. We know record keeping was sloppy. I get it. So are a lot of people. So it's impossible to verify, but said this happened in the summer of 75 as I recant this. On successive Friday and Saturday nights in the summer of 75. He recalls they played on the original small stage near the front door with windows looking out onto York Street. At that time, there were only a few seats and booths, but thanks to Mike's demo and remodeling crew, more seats were added and the stage was moved farther back to the main room. The local acts who played at Toad's in those early days included the folk singer Randy Burns, who had a deep, evocative voice and was also getting bookings in Greenwich Village clubs. Another young New Haven-based singer was Michael Bolton, a.k.a. Michael Bolton, Mario Mancini's favorite singer. That's right, Mancini, owner of Paradise Alley Pro Wrestling, in the WWF from 84 to 92, New England Pro Wrestling Hall of Famer, Paradise Alley Pro Wrestling Hall of Famer. I know you're watching, Mancini, and if you're not, I'm going to send it to you. Huge Michael Bolton fan. He goes all over the Northeast to see him. Talk about loyalty. That's Mancini. He's loyal. Michael Bolton, who would soon change his name to Bolton. It was a cooler stage name, Menta said, who booked the rising young singer for Toad's. He recalls him as an egotistical, but he always drew a big crowd because he had a good voice. You could tell he was destined for big things. It's true. Michael Bolton has always had a big ego, but that was okay. It helped him get to where he was going, along with that voice. When he played shows at Toad's in the mid-70s, his following was picking up. Bolton was always trying to make the show a little better than what everybody else thought it could be. He wanted to bring in to the higher level. Early on, he would jump through a hula hoop that was covered in paper. He did this as an entrance to his show to make it more electrifying. I don't know about that. And of course, the women loved him. With that big hair, that big voice. The first big break for Toad's, what really got the club going, happened at the same time as the initial live shows, which were mostly bluegrass at the time. Those bands played on Tuesday nights, and Mike hit on the idea of offering beers for 25 cents on Tuesdays, and this was called the Night of the Toad. 25-cent beers. Wow, what a world. Bluegrass was popular in New Haven in those days, but Toads offered a range of styles meant to book local bands such as the Helium Brothers, Jake and the Family Jewels, the Sims Brothers Band, and more people came in to drink cheap beer and to dance to music. And the girls were there. Admission at the door was either $1 or it was free. And the word was getting out that Toad's place was hopping. And years later, not only Toad's in the main stage, and only 750, 1,000 people jammed in there, and all the legends. They even had the upstairs club later on in the 90s and into the 2000s called the Lilies Pad, where they had local bands and local performers play music as well. The Lilies Pad. The place was hopping back here. Again, I didn't get introduced into Toads until I want to say 81 for sure. And then working there along in many other places in 82, 83, 84, 85, and then coming back, as I said, and I believe it was the early 90s for my second stint. Brian was my manager. He was my boss. I worked with Tank and Whiskey along with all my boys from Montego and Daniels. We all worked at Toads as well. We were all going to you see the universities that were around there, from Albertus Mattress, a.k.a. Albertus Magnus, Southern Connecticut State University, Quinnipiac University, University of New Haven, and of course, Yale University. When Mike Spernoodle came up with the Night of the Toad, he was the idea guy. Chuck Merger was the food guy. Chuck Metzger. My apologies, Chuck. Chuck Metzger was the food guy, and Mike Corpus was the bar guy who knew that part of the business, and that's smart to run a business. It's tough to know everything about everything, and that's why you have help, hopefully people you can trust. So with Spernoodle being the idea guy, Metzger being the food guy, Corpus being the music part, bar guy of the business, that's an excellent trio. Three of a kind that'll beat any Full House in this era. By the summer of 75, all three of them were realizing that music was starting to drive. And it was driving Toad's place and make it financially successful. It wasn't the French food anymore. All right, fans, we're a little over half an hour in. I'm really enjoying this, putting it all together, reading it to you, reviewing it with you for the first time. My connection to the place and to this area, it really is history in the making. Don't go anywhere because we're coming right back. The legendary Toad's Place and the GOC. That's me.